From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to you. Another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 15th. We've had a rather inauspicious start to winter. If you are a snow lover especially, you've noticed that. And I don't have any near-term relief in that department, but we do have a target date that we outlined in the long-range outlook, actually carried over from the previous week, of when we think this is going to change a little bit. But I don't want to give anybody false hope here, thinking that all of a sudden we're going to change into this cold and snowy pattern going straight through February, March, whatever. And I do see some things that will definitely work against that going forward as well. So I'm going to present both sides of this to you so you understand where we're headed here over the next couple of weeks. I do think that target date is the 26th, and that's what we carried over from the previous week's long-range outlook. So I don't think that has changed fundamentally, but we do have some risks of some milder temperatures in February, the extent of which is still unknown. But if it's going to be anything like we just had, as far as warmth relative to average being more dominant this winter, it's hard to break a pattern like that. So I do think that you have that opportunity in February to, at least part of it, have the southeast ridge have a little bit of an influence here in the second week of February. We'll cover that here in the video as well. So here is what average snowfall is across the region. You can see in February, January is a pretty snowy month typically, but February is the snowiest month from a climatological standpoint. And the reason for that is the temperatures start gradually coming up. Not a whole lot, but they do come up a little bit. And cold air is more dense than warm air, which most people would know, but it weighs more as a result. And because it weighs more, it tends to sink. And when you have sinking air, that's drier air, okay? Warm air, on the other hand, is more susceptible to rising particles that adds to lift, which gives you more precipitation, okay? So in that case, you have the opportunity for more snow if it is cold enough for snow. There will be opportunities in February, just like there were opportunities in December. December did not produce. It was a very good pattern. Overall, the month as a whole, even with the very warm end to the month and the milder start to the month, still finished at least slightly below average across the entire region. So we had opportunities. It just didn't line up right, so we could get some bigger storms. We did have some snow in some locations. Southeastern areas did not get anything, okay? And so many of you will very well know that. Here's what the snow is thus far, and it's very pitiful if you're a snow lover. This is not much snow, and well below what we should be normal year to date, as you can see in the right columns. This is where you should be on the pace of average, heading that direction. This is where you should be to this date, and this is where we are year to date. It is not much at all, especially in our southeastern areas, which have seen very little or none at all. The pattern right now has been as a result of the uncooperative Pacific, where you have this long jet extension coming into all the way to California. And if I start this over, you can see this is looking at right now, and it goes all the way to. That's why you had this. Some people are calling this an atmospheric river, have these fancy media names for it. That's cute, whatever. But it just means one after one barrage of storms after another hitting California. But it's because of this long extended Pacific jet stream that was causing storm after storm just to ride the pipeline into California. That will change this week as this jet is expected to retract. So this feature here is actually an El Nino characteristic, where you have a long Pacific jet extension. And that is a result of East Asian mountain torque. And people are like, what does that mean? Well, I'll show you that in a second. But this Pacific jet extension just floods the country with mild air. And it is a very fast-moving, progressive pattern with system after system. That's why we've had rain chances every other day. But it's too mild for any kind of snow. There's no amplification to the jet. And what I mean by that is let's get my little pen up here. I forgot my pen again. Come on, load. There we go. Okay. So there's no amplification to this jet, so it's just coming straight across in this manner. It's a fairly even. There's no amplification, meaning there's no ridges and troughs. Okay, so there's no amplification of the jet. You got to have these ridges and troughs and placed just right across our country to give us some colder or milder stretches. Okay, we will have amplification coming in the coming week here, however, and I think the target date is still remaining the 26th for that change. And as a result of the East Asian mountain torque, which will allow this to retract. Okay, see it starts going all the way across, and then see it starts backing up. See that? Now it's all the way out here by the date line, or just west of the date line, is where the jet extends to. Instead, as you get into early next week, you have a jet now that's more like, it goes like this instead. Okay, so you got a little bit of amplification there. Not much, but a little bit. And it's enough because this jet is actually retracting to the west. Okay, how far that retracts is going to depend on how February works out, and I'll get to that in a second too. But this is a result of East Asian mountain torque turning negative. This is a classic negative East Asian mountain torque pattern where you have low pressure over eastern China, and the Himalayas and the Tibet regions out here are experiencing high pressure. So this is, if it was a positive East Asian mountain torque, these two features would be opposite. You'd have low pressure over the Himalayas, high pressure over much of Eastern Asia. Okay, that includes Mongolia, that includes China. So this has an effect on retracting the jet. Because this is happening, we're looking at everything upstream affecting everything else downstream. Okay, so what happens on the opposite side of the world is important when we're making long-range forecasts to say, okay, well, the models are trying to say this jet's going to retract. Is that true? We look to East Asian mountain torque and say, yes, that is likely because we have a negative East Asian mountain torque episode forthcoming. Okay, so this makes sense that it would retract. So this is not some BS like all of a sudden it's going to continue going into California. What that's going to do is going to allow them to dry out a little bit. It's also going to put a ridge temporarily on the western U.S. that's going to give us a little bit of a troughiness heading into the end of this month, and that would be that January 26th period that I spoke about onward, okay? So here's that temperature pattern as a result of that, and this is going to move forward as well. So our warmth that was there prior goes away. We have all this cold across the entire country, most notably in the western U.S., but notice at the end of this ensemble loop here, this starts to retract a little bit, okay? And I'll wait till it stops. Okay, so at the end of this loop here, you got a little bit of the southeast ridge coming in here because we're going from an El Nino-like pattern with that long Pacific jet extension to back to a La Nina background state. Okay, more typical characteristic of La Nina, which will have a trough out in the west, and our jet stream kind of goes like this instead. Okay, that's more of a La Nina characteristic. That allows the southeastern ridge to build back in. The extent of which is going to be determined by this Pacific jet extension and how far west it cuts off. If this ends up being west of the date line, the southeast ridge will have more influence, okay, in February. If it ends up retracting just to the date line or just east of there, that's still going to be good for us yet, okay? So there's still some uncertainties with that because it depends on where the Pacific jet extension retracts to. At what point? Does it continue to the west here and west of the international date line? If it does, then we're going to have more of a southeast ridge influence. And we did allow for that here in our long-range outlook that we have, just before and around the middle of the month here, we have a near to slightly above average period. That might actually be a little bit warmer if the southeast ridge has a little bit more influence. And some models like the GFS Extended are actually suggesting that, the one that ran last night, which I'll show you here in a second too. But here is the whole point here is that we are going to turn colder here at the end of the month. It's just a matter of how long this lasts, okay? And I do think, just with everything that's been going on here so far this winter and how everything has not been working out, odds are that the southeast ridge will have a little bit more of an influence here as we get into parts of February. So we think it's still going to be cold to start, or cold, or at least slightly colder than average to start February. But after that, we could be dealing with the return of some milder air with that southeast ridge in place, and most of the coldest temperatures found here in the western U.S. during that time frame. So here is examining the next 2 week of temperature trends. This is looking at graphically for Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport is our centermost point. That's why I'm using it. But the trend here is we're not really worried about exact temperatures because each location is going to be different. But it's pretty much the same general idea here for the next 2 weeks, where we have up through the 26th, you have some milder temperatures that turn a little bit colder here at the end of the month, and this ends here on the 30th of January. So we do, target date is the 26th. This is where we start turning cooler again, okay, relative to average. And you could get, this is conducive for snow. This out here is not. If you have something in here that's snowy, it's going to be a thread the needle situation. So some models are trying to sell something around the 22nd, 23rd time frame. European model last night still had snow on the 23rd. The GFS and Canadian do not. They have rain. I would bet on rain on there in that period, but if you have something coming in perfectly timed, like at night or something, or perfectly tracked, you could have some snow here on that particular day, which is not Monday as in tomorrow, but the following Monday. We have plenty of time to look at that and look for changes, but that would fall right in the middle of this period right here. And you can see it's milder than average at that point. It's not until the end of the month where we turn colder, okay? So the Madden-Julian oscillation is going to dictate a lot of what's going to happen going forward. Again, we're going back to a La Nina-like pattern, which is going to give you the opportunities for snow, but not a slam dunk type thing. So we do have this transition on the GFS ensemble going briefly through phase 1, which is a colder phase, then into phase 2 for about a week or so before it goes into phase 3 before the end of the month. There is a 7 to 10 day lag, or 6 to 10 day lag, I should say, for these phases to affect our sensible pattern for where they are. So in other words, if it's saying the 19th, add 7 days to that, that's the 26th. That's when you actually feel the effects of this, okay? Same thing down here in, it says the 29th. That's actually toward the end of the first week of February where you would feel any effects of phase 3, okay? And on the right here, we're looking at the same model, but this is the extended version of the GFS. This goes all the way out to the 14th of February. So this does take it through the same phases, phase 2 and phase 3, and then collapses in the circle of death from phase 3. Okay, so that's where the models are suggesting we're going as far as tropical forcing. What does that mean? What does that do to the pattern? Well, this is what a phase 2 looks like, and this is very important to notice. In a phase 2, look where all the cold is out here in the western United States, and the jets like this, just like I just showed you. Look where the southeast ridge is. It's pushing against our southeastern and southeastern areas. Okay, so if this comes a little bit too far northwest, we're going to be in a milder pattern. We are allowing for that during the second week and part of the third week of February because of that reason, because we're going to be in phase 2 of the MJO and still in a negative ENSO, which is a La Nina state. I'm not banking on the ENSO neutral to be reached this early this month. We are trending in that direction, and I'll show you that here in a bit too. But if we go into a phase, if we go to an ENSO neutral phase instead of La Nina like we have been, this will change this configuration a little bit. Phase 3 is almost the same between an ENSO neutral, which is shown here, and a La Nina phase 3. So at that point, this is going to affect February. You would have a gradient pattern with the highest pressure down here, and then you have some systems kind of going up and over the top. So this is going to be a gradient overrunning pattern if we can get into phase 3, which most models suggest we will for at least a week or so as we get into early February. Again, 7 to 10 day lag from that point would mean that would affect probably the second half of February, okay, once we get to that point, or at least close to the second half of February. Here is the GFS extended. Now watch the southeast ridge that I was talking about. Look at this. As I said, squashed here. This is for the first week. Look at the second week and part of the third week of February. It has the southeast ridge influence here with the milder temperatures coming back. Not as mild as what we just had, but still milder relative to average. And that's because of the southeast ridge influences. The western U.S. has that has the colder temperatures. And you can see in this pattern here, your jet stream is obviously right? That's your jet. And that allows the southeastern ridge influence here at different points of February. So I don't think February is going to save the day. I really don't. Not sort of save the winter necessarily. We could have snow chances, but there, a lot more thread the needle stuff once you get on either side of weeks 2 and weeks 3. Might turn colder here at the end of the month. Here is the Euro Weeklies. It has a little bit of a southeast ridge influence here. Not as great as what the GFS extended has, but it does have some right there. Okay, and then that shows at the end of the month we start turning cooler again. We'll see. We'll see how that exactly works out, but I do think the southeast ridge is going to play at some point in February, and that's because of all the things I can see that are observed. These models are one thing. I'm looking at observed data. I'm showing what this jet extension is doing, and where it retracts and it retracts to is going to dictate a role of the southeast ridge during the month of February. Okay, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you, I'm trying to do a very basic overview here. This is not using calculus, all right? We're just doing a basic overview so you can get a general understanding of what's going on. And the way this winter has played out, and it hasn't worked out for these signals to come in at a perfect time to give us anything, it hasn't been a snowy stretch, certainly. And here's what the European weeklies show for the most recent run for snowfall at that same location, Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport, and it has snow chances galore going all the way through the 26th of February. So it's suggesting that between actually it starts here around the 22nd, 23rd system, that would be a thread the needle event if it occurred. I don't think so, but it's more so after the 26th when we get in the colder pattern, according to this, that you have plenty of snow chances. But we've seen this before. This model is just suggesting, okay, well, we have a favorable period and there's moisture hanging around. Maybe it'll snow then, okay, because it's going to be cold enough to do so. It's just trying to extend. These are all 50 individual members that run. And each one of these members show a different snow amount. Here we form a mean out of this, or an average. And it's suggesting that the average is going to be somewhere around 16 inches. And you got to identify some storm signals up out of this too, okay? But we've seen this before. This is the projection from the same model on December 7th, okay? Looking ahead for the next 45 days. And this takes you all the way through today, which is here. And all of them suggest that we'd have a pretty snowy period that would include most of December and part of January, right, through the 15th of the month, which we are right now. This is this point. This is what it projected. And at all this snow on here that was supposed to occur here, well, I can tell you this area, this particular location has 1.4 inches so far this year, which is well below what it projected, okay? But for any model to project snowfall that far out, all it's doing is taking a probabilistic approach and saying, well, it's going to be a little bit colder, and we'll have the opportunities for some more moisture events coming in here, and with the combination of the two, it's projecting that we'll have this in terms of snow. So there's still plenty of opportunity here, but it could be like December again, where we just have like a lot of cutting systems and not a lot of snow events. Or you could have something perfectly timed thread the needle that actually works out this time. So for that reason, we had to keep a slightly above average projection for snowfall for now, but we'll see how that goes as we move forward. The current ENSO, which is your La Nina, El Nino, ENSO neutral, right? This we're keeping track of on changes from week to week. It is slightly cooler than what we had last week, but that was a temporary shift. That does not mean that the overall pattern is not heading toward an ENSO neutral, and we still are, because since this was produced on Monday, which is averaging about negative 0.75 degrees Celsius, which is a weak La Nina, right? Last week it was negative 0.6. Since then, the last 7 days, it has shown warming in those regions. These regions right in here are all warmer. So when we come out with a new update on Monday, these numbers are going to go up again and head toward neutral again, because you can see that. This is the observed data through this morning, okay? And it's showing that these areas are turning warmer compared to what they were 7 days ago. So we are still heading this general direction of ENSO neutral, which is this red line is the mean in between. Here is your negative 0.5 threshold to reach ENSO neutral. We're right here, right? So we're going to be heading into that going forward, heading through the neutral periods as we get into the February, March, April period. Okay, I'm very confident of that. Does that happen at the end of this month already? Maybe, if not, probably in February. But we're going to have very soon. We're going to expecting this to transition from a La Nina into an ENSO neutral state. Okay, which changes the background a little bit and may help with snowfall late in the season. Could, but we'll see. Okay, here's what an ENSO neutral winter pattern has, and I will tell you that if we're transitioning into ENSO neutral, that is going to probably give us a delayed start to spring, unfortunately. Everything's kind of heading in that direction, looking way ahead here. This is what the CFS monthlies have for the February, March, April period. You can see we're slightly cooler than average during that period. Doesn't mean the entire time is going to be cold, but we will have some colder episodes lingering into early spring, which has been typical over the past several years, where you want to get spring started and it just doesn't want to go away. Winter doesn't want to go away, or at least the colder temperatures that are colder than average don't want to go away, okay? So we'll see how that works out. But right now, The Pacific extension, jet extension retracts this week with a pattern shifting back to more of a typical La Nina look rather than El Nino like we have been over the past couple of weeks. The January 26th period remains the target date to turn colder, but the southeast ridge determines how long that lasts. Okay, I don't think it's going to last forever. This isn't a pattern change where we're hitting the 26th of the month and then it's just cold the rest of the winter. That's not how it's going to work. Okay, you're going to have the southeast ridge influence in there, and I think on either side of probably the second week of February, you're going to see that influence come back in, all right, and might last for about 7 to 10 days before we turn maybe cooler again. But February likely, this is my opinion, but February likely doesn't save winter. It is possible, but I don't expect it to. Keep your expectations low, okay? I'm not here to BS you. I'm not. I mean, you're going to hear a lot of things going forward here about this is what weenies do. When winter's not going the way they want it to go, when they're not getting enough snow, they look for things that can, like needles in the haystack, to try to prove that things are going to get better, like sudden stratospheric warming. You're going to hear that a lot coming up soon, which is a possibility that in early February it might affect late February and beyond. But you're going to hear about that, okay? You're going to hear about the Southern Oscillation Index. They're going to pull things out of nowhere, okay, to try to make a case. I'm not trying to make a case here. I'm just calling like I see it. I don't see it as being a February saving winter type of thing. You might get some snow chances in there. I do think you do get snow chances in February, but I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome what we've already had and experienced in a deficit, because we are way behind, as I showed you here in this video, and I don't think you're going to make up for that. You can, it's possible, because February has been known for some really doozies of storms, right? You've had that in the past, and it only takes one storm to really turn things around. But the way this winter has gone so far, I wouldn't expect that, okay? Don't expect that. It's possible, but it shouldn't be the expectation by anybody that February is going to be a very snowy month. We do have the month of February, this is what average is, slightly above average for now. That might change if the southeast ridge influence is a little bit more pronounced as we get into week 2 of February. So maybe we can get something between the 26th and, say, February 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in there. And you get some snow out of it. I just wouldn't expect this to be a big, monster storm that's going to save winter, is my point. So we'll see where we are again next week. Again, I don't see anything major in this week ahead. We have no storm signals, no winter storm signals listed in the outlook for a reason, because there's nothing really concrete that I can identify. There is a thread the needle opportunity, again, coming at a not so great time frame, which is the 22nd, 23rd time frame of next week. And I did list that in here in the long range table. That's this right here that I have around the 23rd. Rain, snow showers is what I have there for now. Again, GFS Canadian just show rain and then snow north of here. The European model last night showed at least some snow for parts of our area, so we'll see. We'll continue to follow that. It will be a thread the needle event, meaning it's coming at a time when the pattern isn't really that great just yet, and you might have to have something perfectly timed to track in order to get snow. And I think up through the 26th, that's all you would be dealing with, anything. So no signals of this week, but we might be introducing those going into February if we see something downstream. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That's this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 15th. Take care.